Today, we're getting the insights and wisdom from an experienced music composer and producer, Laurie Bailey. Laurie also has experience as a senior lecturer at Oxford Brookes University and as an audio presenter and producer with BBC. Laurie, really happy to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Oh, you're really welcome. Nice to be here.
You mentioned that you had been at GDC. Do you want to tell me what that was like? Because that just happened.
Yeah, I came back at the weekend. I don't know if you followed this at all, but I was really glad that I wasn't delayed by the fire at Heathrow Airport, which a lot of people flying back to the UK had to deal with. Miserable. GDC itself was really cool. I was there a couple of years ago, and I came back this year just to make some more connections. And having spent two years full time on one particular project, I was quite keen to just basically reestablish normality and meet other game devs and remind myself the world's bigger than my desk and computer and the game that we just released. It was really interesting. There was some quite mixed feelings about the state of the game industry and how funding is working, especially for smaller studios. And you'll know as well as I that job security is not great, even if you're in a sort of established AAA studio and position. So there was a bit of that floating around, and there was a lot of AI there as well. And I know people have very mixed feelings about that. I can't help not being thrilled at the large numbers of AI booths that were there. Just because 2 years ago, while I was representing our game, there were people coming along saying, "Oh, your composer's going to love this," and they were presenting AI generated music, and I am a composer, and I can tell them I wasn't thrilled. So yeah, other than that, it was terrific and great as always to meet some really awesome people. Yeah.
You mentioned networking, which is such a critical thing in this industry. Do you have any tips or strategies that you use to meet people?
It's funny you say it. Networking is something that gives me the chills when I think about it, if I'm completely honest. I think I'm trying to think where best to start. Generally, I would say the fear of networking or the feeling that it's this big edifice that's hard to deal with. Overall, in my experience, you need to teach yourself to let go of that feeling and recognize that really, if you're in a place where there are a lot of people that you want to meet, it is just like being around people in any other situation. And the more normally you can treat it, the better your interactions are going to be. And it helps to try and achieve that kind of balance internally. It helps to know what your goal is, who you think you are in the context of those people, and who you think they are. Because you could be really intimidated and think, I'm about to chat to a BAFTA winning, audio designer, and they've shipped all these AAA games, and they're going to look at my background and think, well, you're not my level. I'm not going to spend any time talking to you. And it's not impossible to have that kind of interaction, but there's no reason to think that it will be until you actually just walk up to them. And I would say roughly 9 times out of 10, everyone's just a normal people person who wants to talk about, at GDC, this cat bum game where you pat a cat's butt. They want to talk about that just as much as the next person, or they want to hear about the restaurant that you managed to find that was actually decent. So for me, it's all about getting over the mental hurdle. And if you can do that and just relax and be kind of normal, then as long as you're in the right place, you can meet all sorts of people. And it's worth being open to anybody. You might have, like I said, you want to have a goal. If your goal is to meet really high-powered people, you don't want to be the person who then ignores, like, I don't know, a student or someone who you don't think you can gain anything from. That's not, you put yourself in their shoes. That kind of energy is not going to help you with the people you do want to connect with. And remember the whole pay it forward thing. If you're networking, meet people at all levels, as long as they're tied to the industry that you want to be a part of, because you just never know. You never know who they might be connected with. You never know what giving them advice and helping them out might lead to down the line. And just remember what it's like to be junior and trying to make your way up. It's always worth talking to people. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's planting seeds. It's a long-term thing, and it's just about making friends when it comes down to it and getting to know.
Yeah. Well, and people do say that phrase comes out quite a lot. People hire their friends. I don't know that that's always true, but it is certainly true that if you've made a good impression, people get the idea that, hey, they might be fun to talk to and hang out with. then you're more likely to float into their mind, as long as you have the skill set required as well. But being friendly to everybody, there's no downside to that. Maybe the hardest part is putting yourself in the situation around the people you want to meet. And something like GDC is quite a high bar to entry, especially if you're like me and flying there from the UK, because you've got to get the hotel bills, flights, and food. It's expensive to eat in San Francisco all week, I can tell you that. So that's a whole other thing, and maybe that's another topic.
You mentioned a game that you had just released. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we just launched Slime Heroes. That is a game coming to all platforms. It was first out on Steam and Xbox at the same time. I think, about 3 weeks ago now? I can't really remember. We've been working on it for a long time. Actually, I've been working on it since, I think it's more like late 2020, but sort of officially midway through 2021 in May. I met the director of the studio just through Twitter, really. And we chatted. It was sort of in lockdown time. And so we spent quite a lot of time just kind of chatting through what life was like when we were all locked down. I started doing music for them and then gradually took on all the sound design and audio system development for that. So I've been full time with them for the last couple of years, having just started doing bits as a contractor. I am really, really proud of what we made. It's been a long time in development. I think it's a lot of fun. There's talk about it being a Souls light or Souls like. There are some Souls elements in it, but the gameplay isn't really Dark Souls. When you see it, you might think it's a bit like Kirby because you play as a cute little slime that can get skills from enemies. I think we have 18 skills. You can combine one of those skills with any of the other skills, any of the other 17 skills to make a unique combination. So it's not quite like Kirby. There's a bit more customization than that. And I would say the cute aesthetic, because you're a slime trying to save a corrupted world, kind of rescue these guardians and these cute little critters, being as plucky as you can be for a tiny little slime left on their own. You might think it's aimed more at a child audience, but I can tell you the challenge is definitely there if you're a bit older, or a child at heart, whatever you want to say. That, and I would also say it's perfect for co-op. If especially, and the director really had this in mind. If you're a parent of a child who loves games, we really wanted this game to be fun for you to sit down on your couch with your child and play through together. And the local co-op is really, really good. We're still ironing out some of the sort of challenges that come with network multiplayer. I've been involved in that, and I can tell you, handling online multiplayer is not straightforward if you're an indie studio. That we work really, really hard. We're still working on it to make it as smooth as it possibly can be. But yeah, I hope that was a decent enough description.
So you did the music and the sound effects and the implementation of some of the audio too?
All of it. Yeah, everything. So we had voice actors, which I recorded and did the voice design for. I had, because we used Unreal Engine 4. When I joined the project, we weren't really using any middleware, Fmod or Wise, and so I basically had to learn how to program everything just in Unreal 4. So I got used to developing my own systems and blueprints, and yeah, so all the audio is me. Yeah.
On the technical side, did you have any programming experience or game engine experience before that?
No, I didn't. Although I suppose I should say that when I was about 15, I used to make Sonic fan games. And you can actually see a Sonic fan game that I made on YouTube because someone dug it out of the old archives to make fun of it. And there is plenty to make fun of when you made it when you're 15. How long ago now? Like maybe 20 years ago. So I did, as a teenager, I spent way more time at my computer trying to make the Sonic character I had move beautifully and play well. I spent a lot more time doing that than most other things. And I got pretty good, I'll tell you that. So, and then I worked in marketing. I sort of worked my way up through marketing to end up a marketing consultant for a little while. And as part of that, I did quite a lot of systems design and web design. So I taught myself CSS and HTML and some PHP and a bit of Java, JavaScript. But that was all kind of tangential. So I think I would say I have the mindset of a programmer. And even doing audio production to a certain standard, I'm sure you'll know this in DAWs, signal processing, it's a similar kind of thread. It's a logical thread. So I found I took to it quite easily. Yeah.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot, but I found a lot of similarities between programming and music, and a lot of people
Yeah.
dabble in both areas.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason you call it programming. If you're setting up a kind of synth track, I mean, all the automation and stuff, you are doing that basically.
When it comes to the compositions, were you just rendering out the music yourself, or are you making sheet music for musicians?
Oh, that would be nice. No, I rendered everything myself. Part of the speed, and to fit the kind of game world that we had in mind. I think. I mean, I used pretty decent orchestral samples, but we weren't. It wasn't realism. Wasn't the goal. We wanted it to be full of color and life.
Are there any plugins or libraries that you gravitate towards?
There is one string library that I can't gravitate away from. In some ways, not for lack of trying. I use a lot. I've got a lot of libraries, but Cinematic Studio Strings and just generally the Cinematic Studio series. I think I don't really know how to beat them for their legato. I don't know if you've used these, but I can only recommend them. They're an awesome Australia-based company. When I first bought the Cinematic Studio Strings, and there was a problem, I used Studio One as a DAW, a DAW, whatever you want to call it. There were some problems with the implementation there that meant if you hit a sample, it would just play forever. And so when you're adjusting a composition by ear, that's a nightmare. The developers were really happy to get in touch with me. They offered me a discount, all this sort of stuff, and put in a fix. So they're amazing. I think the sound is amazing. There's loads of user customized scripts out there to sort of tackle the way that the legato works. Because I don't know if you have this, but like some of the patches require different track delays to sync up the passages properly. But there's loads of plugins and scripts that will help you deal with that. I can't beat it. The Cinematic Studio series, they also do brass and woodwinds, and I think percussion might be coming out soon too. They're great, and those strings are all over the Slime Hero soundtrack. Beyond that, I use some Spitfire stuff, and then it's kind of a hodgepodge really of whatever I need from my sample library.
I haven't tried the Cinematic Studios. I have the Arc series and I have the BBC Symphony. Those
Yeah,
are the
right.
ones that
Yeah,
I've played with. How about the
you,
sound effects?
I'm just going to say again, you got to try them because they're very reasonably priced as well. I mean, you'll be surprised, and if you buy one, then you get a discount when you buy anything else. I sound like they sponsor me. They don't. I think they're amazing. Sorry, you
No,
asked
it's
something else.
I love to hear it. Um, with the sound effects, how are you approaching that? Are you making those? Do you have a field recorder? Do you have some plugins there that you like to use?
I do some field recording. I think for the scale of the project and just doing everything myself, I was very happy to make use of some libraries out there. So there's one charitable library that provides samples you can use commercially called Zapsplat, and I think that's tangentially linked to a sound effect. And I found that way more useful than I expected. Way more useful. I have some Boom library stuff, but honestly, that was only late into the project, so you won't hear very much Boom in the game. That was particularly when I was doing voice design and I wanted some good sort of loopable animal sounds that I could use with a morph to just give some animalistic quality to the voices. But beyond that, no, I used a lot of Zapsplat. There's also Sonis, who give away a load of samples. And I've used quite a lot of their stuff as well. And I don't know, because I kind of have come up doing my own stuff and making. I mean, when I had a YouTube channel before I got professionally into composing, where I did music, and I got so used to making the absolute most I could out of totally free samples. That's a habit you don't move away from that easily because you kind of you get used to putting it in and then using all the plugins that you can to make it sound exactly how you want. And when I've had that workflow for a long time, the idea of going out and capturing a perfect field recording that just does the job for me, it doesn't seem like good value for time. Let's put it that way. But I think I'm probably in the minority, especially coming back from GDC and the huge amount of field recording that goes on there. But I do want to say they've got big teams and big budgets.
With the tracks, did you make kind of the adaptive? Did you have layers to it and transitions? And did you do any dynamic stuff like that?
We did in a couple of places. I decided, well, when I was talking with the director about it, so it's an action adventure game with very distinct biomes. So when you're exploring, there's caves with mushrooms everywhere and very low sort of blue lighting, and there's a brightly lit fairy forest. I think they were so strong and different from each other, rather than a kind of big open world where there's lots of transition areas. These ones were distinct. So we felt that a strong theme for each biome was probably better. And in some ways, that's nicer for me as a composer, because then you can really compose a theme that just is structured exactly how you want it. But we also have quite a big difference between when you're just running around as this little character and when you're in combat. And originally, my boss thought, well, we probably should have a battle theme that plays. But then when you play the game, you're in and out of combat so frequently that I just thought it's just not practical to, or it wouldn't create a good experience. It would create like a yo-yo experience if you're constantly going into and out of a battle track. So I did a basic layering thing, which is I just composed the explore theme, and then I would take exactly that meter structure, everything else, and compose a battle remix of it, basically, that crossfades based on how many enemies are currently aggroed on the player. And then it'll crossfade out. There's a slightly different way out if you have escaped and you sort of run away from the enemy, then the battle music will fade out slower. If you defeat all the enemies that are aggroed on you, it just snaps nicely back to the gentle explore music. So that was pretty much all the layering we did. Yeah.
Did you find yourself getting pushed outside your comfort zone much based off of what the game director wanted?
In sound or music?
Well, both.
I suppose with music, the director had a pretty clear vision about what they wanted, and it made total sense. I mean, they had solo devved this for a really long time. This is Tomas Gomez, who's the nicest guy in the universe and extremely talented, the CEO of Pancake Games. It's the studio I'm contracted with. They wanted a very clear picture. So there were quite a few times when I'd present things and we just throw them out, or I would occasionally have to debate what emotion was being put across by the music. And there was one particular one where we have like a battle dungeon, basically. And my original take on it was quite light-hearted, with very light sort of marching drums and a clarinet piece that just used the main sort of slime theme and made it fun and action based. But they didn't want something as light-hearted as that. They wanted something that felt like a fight for your life, but also in this cute, whimsical slime world. And so we arrived sort of in the middle, and that was quite a consistent sort of theme. Wherever I could, I used the music I had written, and we discarded though, to be perfectly honest. Um, and sound design wise, I mean, when I started, because of my career in the BBC as a producer and presenter, I've been working with sound for years and years. I mean, and I'm very comfortable working with it and applying sound effects when I need to. But there was a certain degree that creating like cartoon sound effects, basically, that felt varied but consistent, was not something I had explicitly done professionally before. So I suppose that was out of my comfort zone, but I did feel pretty comfortable in it pretty quickly.
Do you have anything on the marketplace, or have you considered packaging like music packs or sound effects packs?
For libraries, I haven't, to be honest. I've always thought about it. I mean, I think it's a great option if you are looking to get some passive income, or I guess just to be generous with stuff that you've made that you'd be happy for people to make use of. I have considered it. I haven't been able to. I mean, I have a YouTube channel that hasn't had a new piece of music on it for years now, because I've got a family, as you can probably tell, even from this horrible spare room, all the stuff that you saw me move out of the camera view a minute or two ago. They keep me very busy. The work has been full on trying to get this game launched. There's only been 7 of us in the team. So I just haven't really had time to do it. But with this project having ended and my schedule opening up a little bit, it is on my list of things to consider. I don't know. I don't know. I like to have a really strong idea for what I'm making, and library music, I don't know. By its definition, it feels a bit less precise, maybe slightly more vague, so it can be applicable in many scenarios. And that would be a different kind of challenge that I would definitely be interested in. Sound effects wise, I think until I get myself set up with crazy microphones to do incredible field recordings in high fidelity, um, I'm happy manipulating sound to make it unique. But I wouldn't feel particularly comfortable just messing around with other people's stuff and putting it on as an asset pack. Not to say that that's, I mean, obviously you can do that and do it really, really well, but I don't think that's on my list right now.
You mentioned experience with marketing. Have
Mm.
you applied that? Did you have any tips for marketing yourself as a musician, a composer?
It's funny. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I used to be a consultant, so I'd go in and I'd talk to people, I'd hear what they're doing, I'd get some data, and I'd put it together, and I'd say, listen, I think you're over investing in this, and if you look at the return you're getting, blah blah blah. When you do it for yourself, it's very very different. So I have found I'm not. I don't think I'm a good self marketer at all. Um, I have almost no social media presence. Again, it's a time thing. I find that I just don't have time to do social media. Um, I don't have my website is really out of date. I suppose the best thing I've got is my LinkedIn profile, which is only up to date now because I've made it up to date for GDC. I think, but what I will say is something I've said to my students quite a lot, and I think people don't entirely believe me on this one. But the way that I'm doing what I'm doing right now happened is was entirely through Twitter, as it was at the time. And I had a profile that was like had 24 followers. I decided to rebrand myself as James Lawrence, which I've let go of now, because I thought I didn't want to be linked to my BBC profile or the YouTube remix profile that I'd done, which had kind of got swallowed up into this bardcore void. I can tell you about that later. So I thought I need something different if I'm going to be pitching to make original soundtracks. So I had this tiny Twitter profile with nothing on it. And what I did was just followed a load of indie accounts and got used to checking out the indie hashtags, which were kind of relevant at the time. And I look around and see people presenting their game on Twitter. And if there was like a little screenshot in it or a GIF or something, and there wasn't any music on it, it's very easy to. Yeah, I don't actually like that this is an acronym, but I'm sure you've heard of DINAC. Do you need a composer? And game developers get that all the time. They get it from hundreds of composers. All the developers I work with say, "Oh, I'm relentlessly being spammed by composers." I don't particularly like that language because everyone, if you're in an industry where you've got to pitch out and win contracts, of course you're going to do that. I don't think anyone should ever feel ashamed ever for reaching out and asking, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And kind of stigmatizing it is a bit like it's almost like a self-confidence thing. Oh, it's okay. I don't have to do that now. You guys can do that. But that's just rubbish. I never be ashamed to ask for work. Just have something to show, something that can prove that you're worth hiring. Do get that ready first, and then ask. So what I did was there was just this little gameplay video. There had no music. There was no music composer attached to the project. This was Slime Heroes, and so I took the video, put it in my door, and just wrote a speculative kind of background theme to it, and said, "Look, I came across this awesome looking game." And I gave full credit to everyone and reposted it so that they were at least getting something out of it, and said, "Oh, it just inspired me to make this bit of music." And then Tomas, the developer, reached out and said, "Oh, thanks for this. I don't suppose you want to write the music for the trailer for the game." So I did. Then after that, he said, "Oh, maybe you can just write me a few pieces of music for the game." So I did that. And that ended up with me going to GDC, having a full-time contract with the studio for 2 years, and now this game has been launched. So that's not really marketing. That's just me getting in touch with one guy and trying to have something to show for it, to be as generous as I could be, and not take it personally when it didn't go my way as well. I think that's hard because he wasn't the only person I reached out to. There's a game called Yokai Inn, which I think is still in development. And I did something very similar for that. I contacted the dev and I sent them a piece of music, which they really liked. But then I think when the game looked like it was getting more traction and trailers were coming out, I think they found a composer that they liked more. And so they said, "Oh, thanks, but we're going to go with these guys instead." It's easy to take that kind of thing personally as a judgment on you and your work, but it doesn't benefit you to feel like that. I'm trying to remember who said it. It was someone in acting or something along those lines, or writing. They said what you have to believe in is your talent, and not in a kind of trophy way, but just the fact that you're able to create something that is your own and original. You have to believe in that ability, and don't question that. Don't let a rejection or something bad make you question your talent and your ability to create. Just recognize that it wasn't the right opportunity, and then just keep investing in yourself and try again. Um, so yeah, I hope that helped. And I remember who it was. That's Alan Menken, the composer for like Beauty and the Beast, and I mean, a genius. I absolutely love his scores. And if he's saying that, he's had his song pitches binned by directors. You can't let that drag down the core that makes you want to create. And if you keep presenting that as well as you can, as generously as you can, taking chances, that's how I've ended up doing the BBC. It's how I've ended up doing music and video games. It's pretty much how I've ended up doing all of my professional things. Sorry, I get very, very long answers. I apologize.
Oh, it's great advice. When you were getting into music, how much of your education was self-taught versus formal?
Entirely self-taught for me. Yeah, I got piano lessons until I was in grade 3, and I told my piano teacher I wanted to quit because it was boring, and they weren't very impressed with me. And then when I was 17, I decided I'd always wanted to be a rock star, so I taught myself how to play guitar and taught myself how to. Well, actually, when I was 11 is when the music stuff started. Really, but I remember it being 11. I downloaded a program called Windjammer Shareware, which I don't think you can even get anymore. It was my first MIDI sequencing program. I spent hours trying to recreate the Sonic and Knuckles theme tune or the Star Wars piece of music and tried to do it all by ear. Then I joined the vgmusic.com forums where I composed MIDIs for them, or sequence MIDIs from video game pieces for them. And then I started doing my own things. I entered some of their competitions. So for me, it was probably a slightly obsessive self-teaching pattern of trying to train my ear, generate ideas, and learn how to take what's in my head and construct it in a meaningful way. And I did when I was a student. I mean, I studied English. I didn't study music, but English gives you a whole lot of free time. Certainly at the university I was at, I spent a long time trying to teach myself theory and trying to get to grips with all the forms and orchestration techniques. Um, so I would say I've muddled my way through it, but with the pedal to the floor, if that is a helpful analogy.
How valuable do you find the music theory knowledge?
It's really, I mean, it's invaluable. If you've been properly trained in it, I think you have a head start. Like, there's no question of the value in it because, I mean, if you find yourself in a block, then actually sometimes theory is the bridge that will get you out of that block. And whether that's in the middle of a composition or when you don't know where to start. And the thing I have found trickiest in composing the Slime Heroes soundtrack is, I mean, it's looping music, but it's because as I mentioned, it's kind of this, we wanted a strong theme for the strong location. When it's thematic, I modulate all over the place and change signatures, and to then know how to, I mean, it's not like a recapitulation. It's actually coming all the way back to Mark Zero. Um, I think that is difficult, and some theory for knowing how to modulate and kind of return is invaluable. And actually, my sister is a Guildhall flautist, so she really has done proper music in a way that I was very envious of when she went through it. She's amazing. You can actually hear her. She plays on the Halo theme remix I did. We can cover that in a minute. She was amazing. And so I used to pester her all the time. If I found myself stuck or like I had a hole in my knowledge, I would ask her. I'm sure she found it really annoying, but it was invaluable to me. Yeah.
You reminded me about, I mentioned the similarities between music and programming, and I think there's big misconceptions that programming is very technical and music is very creative, but I've almost found it's more the opposite. And the example I always think of is, even if I'm jamming and I'm just improvising jazz or blues music, what's going on in my head is very technical. It's what chord, what key, what notes fit together, what's the fifth and the octave. And so there's a lot of very technical stuff going on, even
Yeah.
though it seems very all
I envy
creative.
you. I envy you because you've got that in there in a way that means you can let it flow out of you, even in the middle of like performance. Whereas I think that's a real weakness of mine. Is that I wouldn't be much good in a jam session. I'm fine all over the pentatonic scale on my electric guitar, but like when I was in bands, when we were all sitting there together trying to come up with parts and how everything meshes together and everything else, I knew that what I really wanted to do, because of how I learned it for 20 years, was go home and sit at my computer and then map everything out, because that was really my comfort zone for constructing these parts. Whereas there are others, like you're describing here, who've got that technical knowledge just right in their head. And so when they see their guitar, they see everything I see when I am at a computer, if that makes sense. So I think that's definitely a weakness on mine, and anyone who's got more time than I have in life to learn that, you've just got to do it because it's going to be invaluable for all the reasons you just said.
Do you have any personal music influences that you think are have made an impact on you?
I can tell you, I'll try and think of the ones that not everyone says. I'm sure you can picture who that would be in the world of orchestral and soundtrack music. I really love a game composer called Noriyuki Iwadare. He has composed the score for Grandia, the Ace Attorney series, past Trials and Tribulations. I'm trying to think there are some other big ones as well. But I remember being totally captivated by the score in especially that first Grandia game. And there's a track called Lean's Love Theme, which I still think has probably got one of the most powerfully evocative openings ever in any game ever in any soundtrack. I mean, and everyone loves Aerith's theme. Everyone loves Nobuo Uematsu. Genius. I mean, definitely way up the list of my influences. But Noriyuki Iwadare gets massively overlooked. And I think his ability to, especially to score an emotion, is just terrific. So if you've not listened to his soundtracks, I really, really recommend going there. Just likewise with the Wild Arms soundtrack. It's all quite outdated now, but Wild Arms. Oh, what is the composer's name? She's amazing. I've forgotten her name. I have to look her up. But if you listen to the Into the Wilderness opening cinematic, you'll get a taste of it. It uses kind of nylon string guitars in a faux Western style, but the composition is it's just small chamber, but the parts are so distinct and they overlap so beautifully. I go back to it again and again, and the whole soundtrack is a bit like that. Uh, Beyond that, I mean, how many more do you want? How many more do you want? There's loads. I can tell you one composer I'm going back to a lot at the minute for inspiration for a couple of the prototypes I'm working on. I'm going to forget his name as well. I want to look him up. But the composer for Gundam, the anime Iron Blooded Orphans, specifically the Iron Blooded Orphans soundtrack. Uh, I think the mix on that is the thing that I'm obsessed with because it sounds completely different from all the other Gundam soundtracks, and it's so powerful in terms of its drive and punch and the clarity of the orchestration. Again, I'm going to call it orchestration because I think they must have layered different recordings together. The clarity is just extraordinary. So I really recommend that soundtrack. And the composer has done such a wide ranging bunch of things in like romance animes and slice of life and then Gundam Power. That they're really, really interesting. And then I don't know, what's his name? Hisaishi Joe from the Miyazaki movies for sure. John Williams, Hans Zimmer, all the standards. I love Fleetwood Mac. I think especially Lindsey Buckingham's a genius. I think his parts and structure are beyond a lot of how that music is received, in my opinion. There are loads, too many probably.
Those are some great names to look up. I'm not familiar
I
with
mean,
all of
two of the
them.
names I can even remember, so I hope you can do my homework for me. Sorry about that.
You already have a lot of experience. Is there anything you do to intentionally further your craft as far as practice regimen or reading books or anything?
Listening, most of all, I'm really advocate very, very proactive, active listening. My family get annoyed with me because I'll listen to one piece of music over and over again. I think that's just part of my personality type. I don't know whether it's OCD or something else, but I will listen to it until I feel I've wrung every last drop out of it in terms of why they did that and what they did. This actually happened to me recently with Bruce Springsteen, who I'd never really listened to when I was growing up, but I came across Thunder Road and Born to Run, and something in those pieces of music, I just had to listen to them over and over again to hear what was being done that made them stand out. So definitely listening and listen outside of your comfort zone. Listen to some old like that, like listen to some golden oldie stuff that captivated people back then, because you can guarantee they were doing something that is enduring because they're still being listened to. So rather than just thinking, oh, it's the music those guys used to like, try and find the core of what's valuable in it because it's still valuable today. That's how I feel. And beyond that, what I'll say, we had a really cool thing until we got too busy for it in Pancake Games, where every Friday we would do what we call the Learning Friday. And we would specifically take time out to learn something either that would further our discipline or would go outside of our comfort zone. So with that, I did some VFX stuff. So I know how to use Niagara. and create materials in Unreal Engine a bit. But the other side of that was every now and again I would specifically compose something that had absolutely nothing to do with any of the projects in the studio or any of the ideas, and try and capture a sound. And so most recently I made a tiny little jingle to try and sound like the Japanese musician Cornelius, if you come across them. I don't know much about the artist, but I know the early albums they released, amazing, really unique, like sonic palette. So I tried to do some of that. And then I had a go, just because it was on my mind after finishing, what is it, Metaphor Refantasio. Um, I tried to make my own Persona 5 sort of battle theme. less jazzy than Persona 5, actually, maybe more like Persona 3 Reload. And so I specifically tried to ape that. I don't even know what you call it. It's like pop jazz fusion. What would you call it? The Persona 3 soundtrack.
I'm not familiar with it.
Oh yeah, if you haven't come across it, you should, because I mean, basically they make pop music tracks as a video game soundtrack with English lyrics. And the composer there has said the reason they use English lyrics is they wanted to give Japanese players a voice, but not one that would distract them from what's going on, which I personally love, because my go-to if I'm having to study or research something tends to be like lo-fi Korean indie stuff, for exactly the same reason, because I don't want to hear the words, but I do want a voice. So yeah, I would do that. Specifically try and create something in a genre I haven't done before and that is diametrically opposed to the music I'm making for a project.
Those are some great ideas. Well, Laurie, before we go, is there anything else you want to share or plug?
Well, I should say that I have a YouTube channel called LJB0, which I made years and years ago. First video I ever made was a joke about Luke Skywalker being the worst pilot ever. It got some viral attention and then got copyright claims because I used the Beach Boys. And then when I got a bit of a following, I got rid of that video and started posting video game music covers. And alongside what I said about Twitter, I think that YouTube channel got kind of mixed feelings about some of the music on it now because it's quite old, but that really gave me a lot of confidence to pursue what I was doing professionally. And there are a couple of things on there. I did this a medieval version of the Halo theme, and that went viral in lockdown out of nowhere, and it just before Bardcore became a thing. I'm not really into Bardcore because I think what happened to it was people saw an opportunity to get, you know, to ride a gravy train. And so what you hear are MIDI files that have just been scraped from the internet. Someone's put them into a DAW and just put harp loot, all over it. And there's no, in my opinion, there's no creativity in that. So I kind of distanced myself from it. But now, a few years down the line, I'm actually quite proud of some of the stuff that I did, because I really did. I used real instruments and totally restructured pieces of music. There was a Doom one that did very well, and Mick Gordon, the composer, even hit it up and said it was pretty cool. So I want to, now this project's finished, see if I can find the time to release some more covers on LJB0. And in fact, the Slime Heroes soundtrack is going to come out under that artist name. So keep your eyes open for LJB0 as well. That is me, Laurie Bailey. And keep your eyes peeled on Pancake Games, because they are a genuinely unique team. They've taken chances on people who haven't had loads of experience. They've really invested in all of us. They've given us loads of freedom. So every game that we make comes from that place. So please do keep an eye on Pancake Games. And if you get a chance, have a look at Slime Heroes. It'll be out on the Switch and PS5 fairly soon. I'm not totally sure on the exact deadline, but do have a look. If you play it, I recommend single player and local co-op right now, but online co-op is going to be amazing once we've got the patches in to solve some of the hiccups. So do check all those things out. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. I'll make sure that I grab all those links and put them in the description.
Thanks.
It was great having you. You dropped a lot of wisdom and advice, and I learned a lot, and it was fun talking to you. Thanks.
Oh, likewise. I feel very honored to be on the show, and I appreciate you calling anything in my rambling sentences wisdom. It's a good feeling for a Friday. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Cheers.